Namaskar and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Namrata Singh and you're watching Perspective. A day after addressing the nation on Operation Sindoor, Prime Minister Modi visited Punjab's Adampur airbase, reaffirming India's resolve against nuclear blackmail. A striking image from the visit showed him waving to soldiers with an MiG-29 and an intact S-400 air defense system in the background, a clear rebuttal to Pakistan's false claims of destroying the S-400 and a powerful signal of India's unwavering defense stance. In his televised address on Monday, PM outlined India's new decisive stance against terrorism, declaring that Operation Sindoor represents a new policy and a new normal, a stern message that India will strike back firmly if provoked. Let's hear what he said.
कोई भी न्यूक्लियर ब्लैकमेल भारत नहीं सहेगा। न्यूक्लियर ब्लैकमेल की आड़ में पनप रहे आतंकी ठिकानों पर भारत सटीक और निर्णायक प्रहार करेगा। तीसरा, हम आतंक की सरपरस्त सरकार और आतंक के आकाओं को अलग अलग नहीं देखेंगे। ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के दौरान दुनिया ने पाकिस्तान का वो घिनौना सच फिर देखा है, जब मारे गए आतंकियों को विदाई देने पाकिस्तानी सेना के बड़े बड़े अफसर उमड़ पड़े। स्टेट स्पॉन्सर्ड टेररिज्म का ये बहुत बड़ा सबूत है। हम भारत और अपने नागरिकों को किसी भी खतरे से बचाने के लिए लगातार निर्णायक कदम उठाते रहेंगे।
So to discuss the implications of PM Modi's stern warning to Pakistan, we're joined by an eminent panel of guests. Joining me virtually is Dr. Ajey Lele, DDG, Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defence Studies and Analysis. We also have Lieutenant General PJS Pannu, retired. He's defence expert. Gentlemen, thank you for your time and welcome to Sansad TV. Allow me to begin the discussion with you, Dr. Lele. Prime Minister Modi has firmly stated that India will not tolerate nuclear blackmail from Pakistan and has vowed decisive strikes against terror bases operating under the cover of nuclear threats. Given that India has called this bluff before, how significant is the new stance in shaping India's security doctrine against Pakistan-sponsored terrorism?
I think there has been a clarity during this ongoing phase of conflict. That India is not going to differentiate now a state and a terrorist actor. If a terrorism is going to happen from the soil of Pakistan, India will take certain amount of a punitive action, and it's not going to be restricted only towards the terrorist camps. I think that sort of a clarity has been already given. Second aspect which was pointed out by Prime Minister was about a nuclear blackmail. I think nuclear blackmail has been happening for quite some time as far as Pakistan is concerned. They had put up the issue of a tactical nuclear weapon some time back. Idea was just to put India on the mat, saying that if you get into some sort of a confrontation, we will only follow a nuclear route. But India fully understands that what sort of a nuclear strategy India needs to adopt. So India has categorically said that we are not going to get cowed down because of any sort of a nuclear threat which Pakistan is unnecessarily posing. And I think that sort of a clarity has been given by the Prime Minister when he said that we are not getting into any sort of a nuclear blackmail. Because even if you see historically, nuclear blackmails usually do not work. Way back in 1953, Americans had given certain amount of a nuclear blackmail or a nuclear threat, one can say, to a group of Soviets, China and North Korea when the Korean Peninsula conflict was on. But that also had not worked. Unfortunately, it had led to China becoming nuclear by the year 1964. So everybody understands that nuclear blackmail actually are not going to work. nuclear deterrence is actually what it means, that both the countries are having nuclear weapons, so they understand the deterrence value of a nuclear weapon, and unnecessarily they do not get into any sort of a conflict. They always ensure that the diplomacy could be a better option. So I think Prime Minister has already given that sort of an indication that if you do certain amount of a agenda or carry a agenda of blaming us, that we will do some amount of a harakiri by using nuclear weapons, we are not going to get cowed down.
General Pannu, I want to understand from you that Pakistan's military is fighting a war of its credibility. Pakistan's repeated nuclear threats, including statements from its defense minister, suggested that Islamabad is weaponizing fears of nuclear conflict as its last resort. Pakistan has taken us for a ride just on this threat, I'll go nuclear every time.
Dr. Lele has covered the nuclear blackmail. Nuclear weapons have never been seen to be the weapons of war fighting. They were weapons of deterrence. If you recall that when India carried out its nuclear test, Pakistan followed it very shortly thereafter. That was basically to balance out the deterrence. Because Pakistan's conventional military power has always been weaker, and it gets support from either the outside world or later on it developed a bomb, which they started calling it Islamic bomb, because Islam is the only word that knits the whole country together. Otherwise, this country is absolutely disintegrated, and different people in the country have different biases and different interests, and prime most is of the army. So at the end of it, the army became the owner of the bomb and the writer of the strategy, where they used the terrorism as a low-cost option, which was usable, and they've had enough raw material and manpower that they could motivate on the basis of radicalization and use that against India to terrorize India and to run a proxy war by using these terrorists, who ultimately became their leaders. The tanzeems, such as in Muridke and Bahawalpur, the JEM and the LET, actually slowly became the lords and masters to dictate how the Pakistan army should do the business. And ultimately, it is the terrorists who started actually waylaying the army, ambushing the army, and dictating terms. So ultimately, there was a conflict which has been there between the low-cost option of the Pakistan army, and they came to bite them. So therefore, feeling threatened, their chief of army staff, who could not handle the internal political turmoil, as also the state of law and order. They could not handle the law and order situation in Baluchistan and Northwest Frontier Province. The best thing for him was to do cry Islam and start talking about Kashmir as Jugular Vein. Ultimately, what has happened is that India reacted with military, which was with a limited mandate. And with a limited mandate, it basically hit at those terrorists who would become lords and masters of the Pakistan army. And the army chief himself has been brought up in that breed of Islamic hardened military officer who willy-nilly doubled up as the army chief and the leader of the radical society. So ultimately, this is where we've landed up, that before they could pull the bomb out of the basement, I think their nuclear blackmail has been called off by the Indian military strikes, and the results are known to everybody. And therefore, the Prime Minister today from Adampur has spoken about that here and after, this is new normal. And new normal would mean that one shot fired, and we are going to give you a punitive response, which means that India has now decided to activate its punitive deterrence rather than having credible deterrence in building nuclear and the offensive forces.
Right, sir. Dr. Lele, do you think Pakistan's nuclear blackmail is not a strategy but a sign of panic as they realize the situation is slipping away? And the Modi government has made it clear that terrorism cannot be shielded by nuclear threats. It must be eradicated. Was Pakistan playing the nuclear card to deter India from escalating further?
I think that's what Pakistan actually wanted to happen. But that has not happened, because if you see the photographs which have been displayed by the DGs of all the three services, that we have already addressed the threat, we have already reached to their airfields. we have ensured that some of their airfields are already been attacked and the runways are damaged. So under those circumstances, Pakistan realized that India is not going to get cowed down by the nuclear blackmail. And I think that's the reason why they pushed for a certain amount of a ceasefire immediately, because they understood that India is now taking steps where the nuclear threat is not going to work as far as India is concerned. So in a sense, the entire policy which they have evolved over a period of time, and in particularly recent years, by taking the names of a tactical nuclear weapons and try to, one can say, do the debate which is not in the good interest of both the nations. But they thought that that will work out. But that has definitely not worked out. And India ensured that without having a fear of a possible nuclear attack, because India was very sure about what sort of air defense systems which India has got. At the same time, India was also very sure that Pakistan is not going to take a step like this, because India has got a policy of a no first use. But that doesn't mean that if somebody attacks you by using a nuclear weapon, India will not react back. And I think that was the threat in the minds of Pakistan, that even though India is not having a policy of a first use, India definitely is having a policy of a second use. Under those circumstances, there is a threat that if Pakistan undertakes certain amount of nuclear measures, India could have reacted very severely. And I think that actually the threat has worked. And that's the reason why Pakistan has asked for a ceasefire.
You mentioned about a very good point, the tactical nuclear weapon. General Pannu, I wanted to ask from you that, Pakistan has developed this tactical nuclear weapons for battlefield use and seemingly to create a nuclear shield while continuing to rely on terrorism. How does this strategy affect regional security, and what should be India's response?
Namrata, the tactical nuclear weapons, they developed because they felt that, as I mentioned initially, that the nuclear weapons are not meant for war fighting, but for deterrence. So they thought that if they are not meant for war fighting and only for deterrence, what they would make it usable is by developing the tactical nuclear weapons, which would be fired from an artillery gun at shorter ranges in the battlefield, in the tactical battle area. But
Right.
India made it very clear, whether it is tactical or strategic or any form of nuclear attack, they would be responded with a full nuclear attack from India because of our having a second strike capability. So therefore, the entire nuclear warfare understanding, we saw it together as one, whether it is tactical or otherwise. So it means any attack in any form where we even suspect that nuclear bomb is going to be used, we developed enough early warning where even if they were preparing or arming a nuclear weapon, India would have got alerted and not allowed the bomb to actually land on the surface, either destroy it in the air, in flight, or strike immediately. But that strike immediate would mean that strike from all forms of land, air, and sea and destroy Pakistan completely. Well, that was because one bomb would attract the entire might of Indian nuclear arsenal would be used against Pakistan. That became a stated policy under the new the no first use policy.
Okay. Dr. Lele, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's surprise visit to Punjab's Adampur Air Base today. And the images say it all. They effectively debunk Pakistan's disinformation campaign. And, we are publicly showing S-400 images.
That definitely, when Prime Minister reaches to an airfield where you already deployed S-400 system and actually takes some photographs in front of it, definitely you are making a statement that whatever Pakistan has been doing. You see, this disinformation campaign is started since a couple of days back. And that has been continuously done by Pakistan. Social media has been misused, all sorts of activities which are happening. And definitely there was a requirement to give a message that everything is being said by the social media and by the people from Pakistan or who are supporting Pakistan from other countries also, that these types of damages have taken place. So India just made a statement by showcasing that yes, our air defense system stands tall over there, and any sort of a misadventure from side of Pakistan will definitely be addressed. It's not only S-400, our Akash system also has worked perfectly all right. So definitely India has got a very strong air defense cover, and I think that is basic reason why Pakistan has decided to ask for a ceasefire, because if you look at their own air defense cover, whatever damages which we have done wouldn't have been possible if their air defense cover would have worked perfectly. So I think India has made a statement over here that we have got a very good air defense cover, and at the same time, by doing the activities on their airfields, we have also demonstrated to them that you do not have a classic air defense cover which is required to safeguard your own assets. So I think
Absolutely.
here there is a case where India has actually demonstrated to the world also that all sorts of misinformation which is being projected is false.
General Pannu, I wanted to understand from you, and I wanted to take your viewpoint on Pakistan spreading misinformation through all means. And the same images exposing Pakistan's propaganda, as Pakistan had claimed that its missile had hit the runway of the Adampur air base. But Prime Minister Modi visiting the Adampur air base shows that nothing that sort of was done.
Namrata, you see, the propaganda machinery of Pakistan is known. Not only it's not new, they have invested right from their they came into inception. You see all the other wars. The Radio Pakistan used to blur out things. Their forces are advancing, and they've crossed Amritsar and then Lahore, and then they are almost going to capture Delhi. These are the kind of nonsense that they have been feeding in the past as well to their own people.
Right, sir.
As far as the current disinformation campaign is concerned, Pakistan, I would credit them that they use a huge amount of machinery for disinformation, and they write the information campaign very well, knowing fully well that that will come in handy, because actually when they don't have the real strength, then they create a fluff of information around it, which is to confuse, according to them, the adversary, and also bluff their own people into their successes. Today's visit to Adampur by the Prime Minister was not only symbolic, it was purposeful and demonstrative, for the simple reason that anything which Pakistan has been saying is the target, well, the Prime Minister actually stood there with the airmen and the air warriors and demonstrated that, look, I am standing on the target. A, it is not damaged. Secondly, people are all successful after mission accomplishment. They are talking to the leader, and therefore it was demonstrative that they have their equipment intact, they have the airfield intact, and all those soldiers, the air warriors standing there, are all happy and satisfied with what they have done, and he was complimenting them. So therefore, I think this is where the Pakistan information campaign gets bust, by speaking lies which is actually even beyond imagination. If they do that within limits, maybe for some people they can take them for a ride sometime, but not all the time. But here, I think they extended their lies to a point that they themselves started fooling their own people, and they got fooled at the end of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Dr. Lele, Prime Minister Modi has consistently emphasized that this era is not for wars, but neither it is for terrorism. He has warned that Pakistan's sponsorship of terrorism will eventually lead to its own downfall. And he has time and again, given this message to the global community. Your view on this, sir?
I think definitely he has been talking about this era is not for war since what has started happening in Ukraine. Subsequently, we are seeing something happening in Gaza Strip with Israel also. So he has got that clarity. But as far as India is concerned, it is the terrorist attack which happened on India. 26 innocent lives were taken intentionally. So India had no other option but to retaliate. So India never said that they are going to do any sort of a war. What India said was that you have done a terrorist attack. We need to teach you a lesson, because for all these years, in spite of we using diplomacy as a tool, you have not learned the lesson. So definitely there was a proportionate attack which was made by India. Subsequently, Pakistan thought that they can extend the entire envelope of the conflict, but then they slowly realized, they realized it immediately within a day or two, that it's not going to be their cup of tea to fight an all-out war with India. So again, what Prime Minister has emphasized, that we are not interested in a war. You have done some sort of an action. You have unnecessarily taken lives of the 26 people. So we had no other option but to punish you for that. And after that, we are again saying that you please hold your guns back. We are not interested in a war. But at the same time, if you try to use terrorism as a tool, then definitely we will respond to you with all our might. So Prime Minister has categorically said that war is not an option, but at the same time, if you are trying to use terrorism as a tool to wage a war against India, we will take a appropriate action as found suitable at that point in time.
Definitely, Prime Minister has, stated that, our intention is clear that if there is another attack, then India will respond. General Pannu, after the Pahalgam attacks, Prime Minister Modi called it an act of barbarism and reiterated that talks and terrorism cannot coexist, stating that blood and water cannot flow together. How does this stance reflect India's approach to the Indus Water Treaty?
Namrata, the threshold of tolerance in India actually has been redefined that we have no threshold of tolerance, that is zero tolerance. So in that, the bloodshed has flown, and that is exactly what happened at Pahalgam. So therefore, making a statement that water and blood cannot flow together, it means that the IWT has already been put on abeyance. It means that India would do whatever it takes to initially regulate, control, and later on maybe even divert the water. So the right of India is to do whatever it wants to do with the water, which is also required by their own citizens. Why deprive Indian water to the Indian nationals and then give it to those who are against them as enemies, and then they are attacking the same very people who are depriving themselves of water? So I think it is no water means that I will serve my country first and let the others who are actually attacking me suffer the consequences of their attacks. I think it's a very, very clear understanding. The people are talking about the international norms, and the international community would see it this way or that way. International community has also got to see in the overall context of the war on terrorism, which India is now leading, and other countries who have been suffering silently or otherwise at the hands of the global terrorists produced by Pakistan and exported to all over the world would certainly support and understand the Indian perspective.
So as we approach the conclusion of our conversation, I'd like to hear some quick closing thoughts from both my guests.
I think as far as India's war against terrorism is concerned, India is fighting this war with a lot amount of patience for many years. If you really look at a water treaty also, India has been, one can say India has been very considerate as far as requirements of Pakistan are concerned. And for all last 60 years, India has actually followed it in a very transparent fashion. But now the time has come that since Pakistan is not allowing India to survive and continuously doing attacks of terrorism, there is no other option for India to take certain amount of punitive measures. And now we want to raise the envelope further, and we have said that we will not go if there is a terrorist attack from a terrorist organization only. If the attack is coming from a soil of a particular country, we will also punish that country. So I think now India has raised the bar against its fight against the terrorism, and India is very clear that there is nothing called good terrorist and a bad terrorist. Terrorist is a terrorist, and that sort of a position India has taken at a level of United Nations also.
Definitely.
So I think overall, one can say that during this entire Operation Sindoor, one has learned that India is now not going to take any sort of action from Pakistan if it is going to support terrorism.
Definitely. General Pannu?
Namrata, Prime Minister was very clear that it is not the end of Operation Sindoor. He only meant that if there is a ceasefire, it will be on Indian terms. And Pakistan is known to break ceasefire, and ceasefire really means that at the moment you're not firing when you don't fire a ceasefire. But I think it is the behavior in a nation which is unlikely to change. They would continue to tell a lie. They will continue to breach any agreement. They would continue to go and move the world opinion against India. So take support of nations which are more religiously inclined to support Pakistan, and also possibly make business out of Pakistan. I think India is, the operation may have been temporarily halted, but I think we are going to remain in a state of war till the time we understand that it is peace. And I think there's a long, long way to go. India needs to prepare, not only for an adversary, which is such as Pakistan, but also an adversary which is in high-tech operations. So this was a short, intense stand-off battle which happened. But it was not a conventional battle where the Indian armed forces rolled the tanks and kept territories. So this is new age warfare, where I think the entire nation must come together to build indigenous equipment, indigenous way of dealing with it, and I think stand strong to continuously handle these challenges, which will be very, very complex in nature in the future.
Definitely, this is the age of new warfare. And to sum up, our discussion underscores that Pakistan's nuclear blackmail is more rhetoric than reality. Prime Minister Modi's message is clear that India won't be intimidated by nuclear threats, and any terrorist safe haven operating under this pretext will face precise and decisive strikes. Well, that is all I have for you in this edition of Perspective. Thanks for watching Sansad TV.